Hello, today is Thursday, May 12th, 2016, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing today? Well, I want to welcome you all to our show, and we have a great show in store for you today. We're very fortunate to have Reverend Michael J.S. Carter with us today. And might I add, in New York, where I live, it is a beautiful 80-degree sunny day here. And, I hope you guys are all enjoying such a beautiful day where you are as well. First, we're going to take a little glimpse into the missing persons files. First, we have a Livingston County Amber Alert. The search is on for answers after a woman and her 7-year-old daughter disappeared under what police are calling suspicious circumstances. 30-year-old Amanda Hayward and Sapphire Palmer were last seen leaving their home in Hamburg Township, southwest of Binghamton. It was 3 a.m. Tuesday, according to the press release on the Hamburg Township Police Facebook page. Hayward's purse was found about 3 hours later on the side of the road, several miles away. Her credit cards and cash were inside. Hayward was driving a black 2001 Chevy Prism with Michigan license plate CC86371. After hours of searching, a Hamburg Township narcotics officers located it in Ypsilanti Township, and it was empty. Police now say they both are believed to be traveling in a red Ford Escape with license plate number 2, H as in Henry, V as in Victor, A as in Adam, 18, with a 64-year-old white man who's an acquaintance. An Amber Alert has been issued. The family is desperately searching for answers. If you see the mother or daughter in these photos, which I will post on my website, please call 911. Amanda Hayward's description is she's a white female, 30 years old, long strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'7", 120 pounds. Sapphire Palmer's description is she's a white female, 7 years old, long red hair, green eyes, 4 foot tall, 55 pounds. She was last seen wearing a purple nightgown. Please, I always tell you this every time I do a show. Please take the time and look around. If you can bring these people home or save a life or even bring closure to a family, that is the most amazing thing, because you never know when it's going to be you that needs somebody to help you. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we will have Reverend Michael J.S. Carter with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. Reverend Michael Carter is originally from Baltimore, Maryland. He moved to New York City in 1980 and lived there for 25 years, working as a professional actor before moving to Asheville with his family. Michael is an ordained interfaith minister and received his B.A. degree in letters from the College of New Rochelle, where he graduated cum laude. He received his Masters In Divinity Degree from Union Theological Seminary in New York City, class of 2000. Reverend Carter has written articles on UFOs and religion for such publications as UFO Magazine, Alien Encounters, the MUFON UFO Journal, Contact Forum, the S.P.A.C.E. newsletter support program for Abductees Contact Encounters, a UFO support group in New York City. He has spoken at UFO conferences such as the Second Philadelphia Need to Know Conference, the annual Long Island UFO Conference with Budd Hopkins, as well as appearing on radio and TV appearances across the nation. Reverend Carter has also appeared on Japanese television discussing the Bible and UFOs. A longtime UFO experiencer, he lectures extensively on the topic of religion and UFOs. He has appeared on the Sci-Fi channel's Steven Spielberg's production of Abduction Diaries, The Real 4400, and is frequent guest on the History Channel's production of Ancient Aliens. Hello, Michael, and welcome to info2rail, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to this, so it's my pleasure.
Can you start off by telling our listeners about you and what you do and how you came about doing it?
Well, I am a minister of a Unitarian Universalist in Black Mountain, North Carolina. I've been there, it'll be 4 years in July. I hail originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and moved to New York and lived there for almost 30 years and moved here 10 years ago. I was in the professional theater. I was an actor in New York City, was a member of all the unions, and that was another life, but it was wonderful because it prepared me in some ways to do the things I do now as far as public speaking, that kind of thing. And I always knew on some level that I was going to be a kind of priest, and it could be a secular priest. I could have been a therapist, but I always knew I would be delivering a message, that I would be part of my life's work would be speaking and to teach. And so that part of my life came true. I left the professional theater in New York to go to seminary. I went to Union Theological Seminary in New York City, proud to say one of the top seminaries in the country. Graduated there in 2000. I mean, I went back to school. Got my master's degree in 2000 from Union. Got my BA cum laude from the College of New Rochelle in New York as an adult. I was 44 years old when I got out of seminary. So worked a lot as a chaplain. And a hospital chaplain, to be more specific. So that's a truncated version of how I got to be a member of the professional clergy.
Wow, that is awesome. Can you tell me about how UFOs fit into what you do?
They do fit into what I do, and they don't fit into what I do. And that is to say, I don't have a UFO church. I do not preach UFOs from the pulpit. Nor do I feel called at this point to do that. But when I had my first encounter as an adult, which, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, something came up on my screen to say we had a connection problem. Anyway, when I first had my encounter as an adult, December 28th, 1989, in New York City, which I talk about in my book, Alien Scriptures, I started to think that, wow, if I was visited in 1989, then these beings were possibly here in 1989 BCE, and probably before that. So what I started doing, I'm not a nuts and bolts person. I have friends who are interested in how do these machines fly, the nuts and bolts of it, if you will. I'm not that concerned with that. I'm more concerned about the spiritual growth that can happen after you've seen one of these beings. And so I started looking in other religions and reading other texts and seeing if I could find any connection. And what I came to realize is that the Bible, the Quran, some of the Hindu scriptures, the Mahabharata, they all talk about beings coming down from the sky. Native American cosmology, in which they're called the star people. And I started piecing together that these beings have been here for millennia, and perhaps some of our religions were formed because these beings, because of their technology, because of their spiritual evolution, they were mistaken for gods. And that's how I got to the research that I put into the books that I've written.
That's very interesting because I've had one other guest on my show who, kind of pieced things together a little bit as well. I recently just, I've always been very, very big believer in God. He's always been the center of my world, but there were a lot of ups and downs in my life, probably in the last 6 months, I think is when I found God more than I ever did in my life. And I can honestly tell you, my life has turned around 150%. Every day when I wake up now, it's a brand new, beautiful day. And no matter what comes at me, my faith is that God will take care of it. So I don't have the worries or the, the upsets that a lot of people still have in this world over every little thing that happens. Because in my faith, I know that God's already got this. So, it's such an amazing walk, to find God and to, really put your faith in him. I read your God consciousness, and that was such an inspiration. I mean, I know that it's like a 30-day thing, but I had to read it all at once because it was so inspirational and it was so amazing. It was something that you just had to keep reading. Can you tell us?
Well, I thank you.
Can you tell us about your books?
No, I thank you. And I want to say to the listeners that the inner peace that... Hello?
Yep, I'm here. Go ahead. Sure.
I want to... Yeah, for some reason, I keep going in and out, but it's okay. I want our listeners to know that you can have that inner peace that you are talking about, that I've experienced, and you don't have to believe in the traditional God as a man who's up in the sky judging you if you're right or wrong. I mean, this is what Buddhism talks about and other forms of spirituality. Which book do you want me to talk about first?
Well, let's start with your first book.
Okay, well, Alien Scriptures started because of my, and I don't go into all of them, but because of my face-to-face meeting with some beings that I can only say are star people or extraterrestrial intelligences. I did not believe in UFOs or life on other planets prior to this. I grew up in a very free on the outside, but kind of a strict dogmatic theology where we were saved and other people weren't, and anything that wasn't in the Bible or explained was either evil or it just wasn't worth looking into. But after I had that experience on December 28th, 1989, and they continue to this day, it just opened up my mind to other realities, to other ways of looking at life, and it just accelerated my spirituality. And that's what I talk about, the Bible, the Quran, and basically those three, actually, and where UFOs may fit into that cosmology. I came to the conclusion that anywhere you see the word angel in the Bible, which really means messenger. It's Greek. The Greek word is angelos. If you put star person or extraterrestrial there, I don't like to use the word alien, the Bible makes more sense. So that's Alien Scriptures. And I'm not the only one talking about this. I think I'm one of very few ministers who have had the experience and has written about it. But I'm certainly not the only one. The second book was called A New World If You Can Take It, God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Consciousness, where we delve a bit deeper into Catholicism and Protestantism and their search for extraterrestrial life. I learned that God, for me, was not a human being or an anthropomorphic being, but a spirit, an energy, if you will, an intelligence, and that we're going into a new world where all the earth changes, all the things that we see right now, they can be scary to some people, but we're going into a new world. The old way of doing things is not working anymore. And so I talk about a new world if you can take it. And specifically, I have the teachings of the Palladians. These are blonde, blue-eyed, human-looking beings. And I write about their spirituality. The third book is God Consciousness. These next two have nothing to do with UFOs. It's a 30-day journey to achieve God-centered thinking. I use texts and practices from secular sources, from Christianity, from Hinduism, from Buddhism. And it's a month-long handbook of meditation practices and reflections to help one let go of the fear that they may have of everyday life and to achieve what I call, and I'll use it in quotes, God consciousness. And last but not least is one of my favorites. It's called The Metaphysics of Spiritual Healing and the Power of Affirmative Prayer. I am an energy healer. Specifically Reiki, but other forms of energy. And I believe in the power of affirmative prayer. And by affirmative prayer, I mean where you're not begging or asking a God to do something for you, but when you realize there's no separation between you and the divine, and so you affirm. As you were saying, in a way, Sue, every day, I know that someone has my back. You use the words, God has this. You're affirming that. So there's no fear. Whatever happens, I will be able to handle because I'm not doing this alone. That's a very different prayer or affirmation of God. Please help me do this. I need this happening. Please help me do that. Affirmative prayer focuses on the positive.
I have to say, though, I used to be that kind of a person who...
Yes, I did too. We all did.
All the time, I'd be like, come on, God, please help me do this. And then I got to the point one day, I've grown a lot. I was in a pretty rough relationship for 7 years, and I kind of lost myself, and I lost my way all the way around. And one day, I think it was, I realized exactly what was drawing the negativity to me is the fact that I would say, you know what, God, just put this back together and make things great, and I'll take the consequences for it if you just make it happen. And, it's like I started to hear God talk to me, and he would say, you know what, I keep taking this, and, I keep shutting the door on this, and you continually keep opening it. Well, here you go, and here's the consequences of it. So don't blame me when it falls apart. You asked for the consequences. I'm giving you what you asked for. So I began to actually realize, and I hit rock bottom one night. I fell on my knees and I said, look, God, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm going to give it all to you. I said, I'm handing everything to you. I'm trusting you. I know you got a plan for me. I know you got my back, and I just can't do this on my own. And, since that time, when I actually completely gave myself over, everything in my life changed like you wouldn't even believe. It was like all of a sudden, my whole way of thinking changed.
Yes.
There was no negativity anymore. When I woke up in the morning, I was so full of peace and light and happiness. And today is going to be a beautiful day. And whatever came my way, it just didn't matter, because no matter how bad it was, I know, at the end of this tunnel, God's got my back. The light's there, and I can see the light. So, things just changed my life. And your book, God Consciousness, really helped me as well. Like I said, you just can't stop. It's one of those 30-day things that I couldn't stop. Once I started reading it, I had to finish it all at once. But it helps you in such a way to. It's just such a peaceful book. And, just the journey to, achieving God-centered thinking all by itself it brings you to a higher place. Even for me, I was on top of the world. Everything was great. And I'm like, I read that and I'm like, wow, the inner peace, it even heightened my inner peace. But, I just wish people out there would realize that their days do not have to be filled with the negativity of what's going on in this world. They can change how they react to everything that comes their way, and their whole life could change in an amazing way.
You're right. And I think your show like this and books and that's how you get the message out. I mean, we can't do it for them, but you and I are living examples. I think one of the difficulties in it is that we've been, sometimes it's more difficult to unlearn something, pardon me, than to learn something new. And we've been taught, well, at least I was, that God, this energy, this intelligence was always outside of me, that I was separate from it. And so, and I was taught that I wasn't worthy to even, my God, to even be, to even ask for anything, to even want anything. And so as an adult, I had to unlearn that. I had to go, wait a minute. If we want to use the words, the kingdom of heaven, let's use that, is within me. It's all around me. I'm not separate from it, but I was taught that. And so it took me several years to say, wait a minute, this is not true for me, and I need to let this go. So I think that, and I feel for a lot of people, it's difficult to unlearn what you've been taught probably since childhood.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, we lose people out of our lives, whether it's a relationship or somebody passes on, you know, and moves on to the next part of life. But what we don't realize is God has a plan for us. And sometimes he does bring, you know, people into our lives to teach us something. But that loss always has a bigger plan, a more beautiful ending to it. When one door closes, he always has another door to open. And you know what? That's
well. I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
No, what were you saying?
I just think that if people have more faith, that when one door closes, there's such a more beautiful, you know, plan waiting for us. We have to accept the fact that not everybody that's brought into our lives is meant to stay.
Well, the Buddhists talk about this. They call it impermanence. And Buddha said that the reason for suffering, or the reason for life being unsatisfactory, is that we cannot accept change. And whether it's relationship, or whether it's the death of a relationship, or the physical death of a parent, or whatever, life is change, and we can learn that. And it's about death and rebirth. We see it in the seasons. But once we come to realize that, and this takes years, and it doesn't mean that you don't feel bad when you lose something, and sometimes things are hard to get over. But that when we realize that nothing is permanent, everything changes. Once we can kind of wrap our mind and hearts around that, we can love more deeply, because we know that things do change. We can stay in the moment more and be fully in the moment. And then when things do shift or change, we realize that's part of life. We can be thankful for the experiences and move on. But that takes years, but we can always start today.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. Right now, I'm standing in the crossroads where, with my new, you know, my whole new world changing, I'm kind of searching for God's plan for me, because I love doing my show. This is like the most amazing thing, is getting the chance to, you know, talk with new people and see where they're going in their lives, and being able to, you know, share that with the listeners, and just have a chance to get to know people all over the world and in different cultures and, you know, different subjects of life. But I also feel as if I have a calling to spread God's word more, or to spread happiness and healing and stuff. And that's where I'm standing now, is kind of at the top of that hill where I'm not really sure how to do this. I feel like that's, you know, I am so full of peace and you know, I every day I feel so filled up with God, and I so badly just want to explode and share that with everybody, and just be able to change lives and make people, you know, through God, make people realize or see just how beautiful life can really be. And I'm just at that juncture right now where I'm just not sure if my show is my calling. And that's something I'm going to continue my show, because it's, you know, that's my dream. Something that one day I just said, you know what, it's my dream, and I'm going to have it. And I really prayed a lot to God and said, you know, is this something I should do? Is, you know, show me. And, you know, I've been at it for 2 years. I love what I do. And my listeners base is really picking up, and it's going great. But I also feel like there's something else I'm called to do. And that's where I'm kind of stuck right now. And I'm not, you know, I'm just waiting for that message, kind of.
Yeah. And it'll come. It'll come. It'll come when it needs to come. You trust that. It'll come.
And that's the whole thing. I mean, if people start to trust that, it's not in our time. And I think the hardest thing in the world that I ever had to say for me was, God, your will, your way. Those were the hardest words I ever had to actually say and mean. Your will, your way.
Yeah. I hear you. I want to just let listeners know that you don't have to believe, at least from my point of view, you don't have to believe in a God or believe in God the same way that anybody else does to make your life more fulfilling. It doesn't mean that you won't have challenges. It doesn't mean that you won't have ups and downs in life. What it does do is empower you that that whether you're an atheist or Buddhist or don't know and don't care, an agnostic or Hindu, there are basic truths in all genuine spiritual paths about achieving inner peace. And so that when the slings and arrows of life come at you, you're not thrown off your center, and you handle them. And you handle them with a certain equanimity and with a serenity. And that's potential in all of us.
I think for me, I think I personally, I like the spiritual healing part of it. And that's something that I'm really being pulled towards. So, like I said, I just kind of put that, when that stuff is ready for me to know, I'll be put on that path. But that's where I kind of feel like I'm being pulled, because the spiritual healing for me, I love to help people. I would do anything for anybody. And that's where I get my peace and my, that's my personal peace within me, is if I can help somebody else.
Yeah.
If I can make somebody see the light in a dark place, or feel peace where there's so much turmoil, or if I can make somebody realize that, life is not that bad, anything to help somebody. And that's me. So that's kind of my struggle, because, I really think spiritual healing is my thing. Can anybody do this spiritual healing?
I think you can. As Paul says, everybody has a gift. For some, it's clairvoyance. For some, it's laying on of hands. For some, it's teaching. Everybody has a gift. And it's just about finding out what that gift is for you and how to access that. And for me, the clarity that I've gotten has been from just a daily meditation practice. And there are many ways to do that. Sometimes I put on a tape, self-hypnosis. Sometimes it's just listening to some music and practicing contemplation. Sometimes I light a candle and sit in half lotus position and just follow my breath. There are different ways. But all of the ways require that one spends some time of quiet a day. It could be 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening before bed, whatever is good for the rhythm of your life. And that way you shut out all the noise of the day, you shut out all the noise, and you get a chance to hear your own inner. Sometimes you'll hear your inner noise, but that has been the best way for me to get clarity in my life, or when I'm at a transition or crossroads.
Well, I'm an empath. I've been told this many times, that I'm an empath. I can really feel what others are going through at all times. All somebody has to do is, I can look at somebody, I can look in their eyes or look at their face, and I can feel or know immediately that there's, sadness or anger or, something going on. And I can pretty much feel and know just by that encounter, just even people I don't even know. I'm in public and I'll just see somebody and it's like I go to a place where I can just feel that anguish or feel that pain. And the biggest thing that rises up in me is, Sue, you got to do something to help this person. And that's kind of, where I'm pulled, because you can't just walk up to a stranger and say, I feel your pain, or I feel this. What can I do to help you? I mean, they probably look at you like you're crazy, but that's kind of what I am drawn to is I can see it, I can feel it, but I don't know, that's where I'm stuck right now. I want to be able to reach out and help people. I want to be able to, settle that inner turmoil. That's where I'm at right now, and it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah. It's a journey. It's a journey. I don't do that so much anymore. I learned first. I'm pretty sensitive, and I learned some boundaries. I had to learn boundaries because not everybody needs or wants to help. There's an old quote by Rumi, one of my favorite poets. He says, "When I was young and clever, I wanted to save the world. Now that I'm older, I realize all I need to do is change myself." And so because I had those gifts, I had to learn boundaries, A, because I didn't want to burn out. B, the world doesn't need to be saved. The biggest way that I could help people was to live my own truth and not tell other people how to live their lives, only because you don't know what path they're on. Maybe this lifetime, the path that they're on, that maybe they have to find out that money and sex or whatever is not all there is. Now, if someone asked me for some help or advice, I try to give it. But I started practicing boundaries. I remember when I was in therapy, and the therapist said, "What I want you to do, I want you to do two things this month. I want you to practice saying no, but I also want you to stop giving advice unless someone asks for it. Try to go a whole day without giving someone advice if they don't ask for it." And it made my life easier. But it really taught me some boundaries. And but that was part of my journey. And maybe not where you're at or what have you, but I know in some ways it comes up because good fences make good neighbors. And I know sometimes I could be off-putting because people may say, "I didn't ask for your advice," or "I don't want that right now." It's like when I was in a 12-step program for codependency, we had to learn the boundaries, and it was like I just needed to stay in my lane. And it really made my life so much easier because I didn't have to. Life is hard enough learning to live your own life. It's even harder when you're trying to tell someone else how to live theirs. And even as a professional counselor, I use those boundaries. They keep me from burning out.
I think I need to learn boundaries in a lot of ways as well when it comes to taking on too much of everybody else's problems.
Yeah.
That's hard.
That's because you have a gift.
It's hard though.
Yeah, it's hard, but you can learn it, and you're not going to be perfect. But you can go to the 12 steps. You can Google them online. You can Google boundaries. John Bradshaw, wonderful therapist who changed my life. He was on Oprah and all this. I used to go to his lectures when I lived in New York. He's in his 80s now. He's written some wonderful books, but they talk about boundaries because when you come from a background, like for instance, I came from a background where I'm the oldest. I took care of my younger brother. I was like this. I was the caretaker, and so what happened was I got rewarded for caretaking. And I grew up thinking that's the only way I have worth. The only way I have worth is if I'm taking care of somebody. And that's not true. I may choose to, but that's not my only job. And so because if you fall into that trap, when you're not taking care of people, you feel like you're not doing anything.
That's me.
And I learned the best thing I could do was to take care of myself. Do your listeners are they mostly spiritual people from the demographic that you have? I'd be curious to see.
A lot of them are because
how they listen to this conversation and how they would relate to it.
A lot of them are because I've had Ale Marzulli. Has been on my show 3 times. He's coming back again next week for the 4th time. And, everybody loves it because he's very spiritual and, talks about the Bible and stuff and the way he connects his stuff. And, there's so many people that, I get a lot of, requests on my show for a lot more spirituality. I'm trying to get, more spiritual people on my show like Joyce Meyer. She's really booked, but, I'm on a waiting list to get her on. And, a lot of people are asking for it. So I know my audience is growing in spirituality like that.
Yes, I love it.
I
It's
do
wonderful.
too. I love it too. I'm somebody who, every morning on Facebook, I have to post, good morning, what an absolutely beautiful day. And they're going, Sue, it's raining. And I said, so? Rain has nothing to do with how beautiful the day is,
Right.
And
Right.
I get told all the time, you know what, you are such an inspiration for you're so upbeat and stuff. I have my moments when I'm not, but those are very few and far between, because when I have those moments, I change them. Because at that moment, I'm thinking, you know what, Sue, there's no reason for you to be thinking like this. God's got my back, and life is just perfectly fine. So,
Yeah. And the thing is, though, I think that, and it may not be fine for everybody, and we have to be able to hold space for that. I find in the spiritual community, and my books talk about this a little bit, and just letting folk know, you can get them on Amazon if you just Google or look up Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. I think at least for me and other people I know, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the ego. And by that, I mean, what we can wind up doing is saying, if you only did it like I did it, you'd be okay. And we may not intend for that to happen, but we got to give people the space. It's like people smoke cigarettes. You may have a loved one that smokes cigarettes, and it's bad for them. They probably know it's bad for them. It says so right on the side of the package. And yet, we can get upset because if they don't listen to us, because we know what's right for them. And I think part of that on the spiritual path is, and I'm talking different from religion now, because for me, spirituality and religion are not the same thing all the time, that we have to let people have the space to make their own mistakes, even if they're mistakes that we would not do or we've done before. Even creation does that. If I go out on the porch and jump off the porch 4 stories up, no God or angel is going to come and save me, because that's a decision I've made. And even the universe works like that. That's how we grow. You learn from your mistakes. So I always put as a caveat, because it's like the parable of the pearl of great price. Jesus says you find the kingdom of heaven. It's like a pearl, and you want to sell everything, and you want to go run and tell everybody you have it. Wonderful. But you also can't force people to do something just because it's good for you. But there again, we go back to boundaries. Because part of having healthy boundaries is part of having a healthy spirituality.
I agree. I think that's a lot of people that I've spoken to, because I have tons of people that come to me daily. Sue, this is going on in my life. What do I do? And for my boundaries, in which I am learning right now, I'm right at the beginning of learning boundaries, because, I allowed things in my life that should have never been, that I personally would not allow in my life. But, I did, because I didn't know boundaries. And, I'm trying to, I won't turn anybody away who needs me to listen. But at the same time, I have to have boundaries in my life as well. Like, with people I'm not somebody who drinks alcohol, and I don't sit there and tell people they shouldn't do it or anything else, but it's something that I don't want in my life. I've seen the destruction of it. I've lived the destruction of it. And for me, that's a personal thing. I do not want somebody in my life, I don't want to be surrounded with people that drink like that. To me, that's a very uncomfortable thing. And those are boundaries I need to set. And I think that it's hard, for me also, I had the mistaken notion that there are, everybody has good in them. Well, it took me a long time to realize there's just some people out there who don't. And, so boundaries is what I'm working on big time right now. And it's definitely a struggle. Boundaries is definitely a struggle.
Yeah. So anyway, is there anything else you want me to talk about in the books? I don't want to make this a therapy session, but right. Yeah, is there anything else you wanted me to touch on?
Can you tell us about the power of affirmative prayer and how we can pray like that?
Well, I used to attend a Unity church, and also the religious science churches do this more. And again, it's basically, instead of, it's unlearning that we are not separate from our Creator. We are not separate from the universe. We are not separate from the all that is, no matter what name you give it. If you notice, in the beginning of the book, I tell a story. And the story is from the Hindu tradition. And the story is about Brahman, who's the chief god. And he decided to take the divinity away from human beings because we were powerful within ourselves. Psalm 82 says that you are gods and children of the Most High, and that resonates with the Hindu tradition, that human beings were gods and goddesses. And so, but we started to abuse the power that we had. And so the lesser god said to Brahman, what should we do? And we have to bury the divinity of human beings in the earth. And Brahman says no, because one day they'll go into the earth and they'll find it. And then they say, well, we'll put it in the deepest ocean. And he says, no, they'll find their divinity. They'll learn to swim the waters. We'll put it on top of the highest mountain, the other God said. And he says, no, because they'll learn to climb every mountain and find it. And they said, well, what do? We don't know where to hide it. There's no place on earth we can hide it, in the sea or any place. And then Brahma said, I know exactly what we'll do with the divinity of human beings. We will hide it deep inside them, and they'll never think to look for it there. And that's been happening all through millennia. We look outside for our divinity. We look outside for the kingdom, if you will. We look outside for our good. And what affirmative prayer does, which is different from the old Baptist traditions or Methodist traditions or what have you, when you're taught to say, please God, please God, please God, I know I'm not worthy, I know I'm a sinner, I know. Affirmative prayer says, no. Yes, do I make mistakes? Sure, make heinous mistakes. But God is in me. And so, again, we can go back to what Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so what affirmative prayer says is that we are part of a universe. We are part of God. And we cannot be separated from this energy. And so, therefore, what I need to do is to affirm that there is good in the universe. As you were saying, Sue, that no matter what, if more money is going to be needed, more money will be there. If the right relationship is needed, the right relationship will be there. Whatever I need, God, the universe, call it what you will provide. Now, that takes time, because you're talking about thinking a totally different way, because we were taught that you're not worthy. You don't deserve what you have because you're a miserable sinner. That God is up there in the sky and you're way down here, and the only way I can get a hold of this God is if I beg or plead or grovel. And affirmative prayer says, no. We are children of God. We are children of creation. And all I have to do is start affirming that. I'll give you an example. When you need money, most of us, me included, not as much now, we focus on being broke. Affirmative prayer says, why would you focus on what you don't want? You want more money. You want more, better, robust health. So why not focus on the things that you need or want rather than focus on the things you don't have? This is quantum physics. We know that what we focus on, we create. And we have to choose every day between love and fear. So when I want something, I focus on what I want, not what I don't want. And I've learned that this starts to manifest in my life. This is what affirmative prayer is in a nutshell. Pick up the book, attend a Unity church if you would, attend a divine science or religious science church if you will. Jesus says, it is done unto you as you believe. Sue, you said, I get up in the morning and it's a beautiful day. Why? Because you're going to make it that way because of your mind. Because you're saying, I'm going to keep this positive attitude. I'm going to keep this feeling of abundance. And that's what changes. When you change the way you think, Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's different because we've been taught just the opposite. And this doesn't mean you throw away, if you're a Christian, you throw away the Bible, or if you're a Hindu, you throw away the Upanishads, or if you're a Buddhist, you throw, no, not at all. This philosophy fits into any cosmology that you already have. But Buddha said this 500 years before Jesus. Okay, because Buddha lived 500 years before Jesus. He said, all that we are and all that we will ever become is due to the way we think.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, if we think life is miserable, if we think life is dangerous and scary, that's what's going to be reflected back to us. But if we think that life is a great adventure, and we start to live it that way, if we look at our challenges as lessons to be learned. Some of you out there have been in bad relationships, and you might keep saying, why does this keep happening to me? Well, after a while, you come to realize it's not about them anymore. It's about me. Maybe I don't really think I deserve a good relationship. Maybe I need to be needed. Maybe I'm a rescuer. I got to help everybody. I've got to help people. I've got to serve everybody. And you may draw people because remember, flies come to the light too. And so if you have a light, you draw a lot of things to you. You have to decide what things you want to let in and what things you don't. Those are boundaries. But it all comes back to us. And part of spiritual growth is you stop thinking like a victim. Why is this happening to me? Why do I keep drawing these men into my life? Why do I keep drawing these women into my life? Why? After a while, you start to realize, well, wait a minute, there's a certain vibration I had. Maybe I grew up thinking that love was rescuing people. Maybe I grew up thinking that if I saw my parents in a bad relationship, and that's the way I learned to love, so I'm in a relationship with a batterer or someone who is abusive. You can fill in the blank for whatever you want. But once you realize that you're not a victim, and that when you start to change you, then the outside takes place. There's on the cover of my book, The Metaphysics of Spiritual Healing, there's an old African proverb at the top. It says this: if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can do you no harm.
Wow, that is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you have a belief on why you were visited by, these extraterrestrials?
Yeah, I do. I have several friends who are very talented clairvoyants, and it was interesting because they knew about it before I told them, but that I had been visited in other lifetimes, that I had worked with them as in prophecy, that I had worked for them in other lifetimes, and that I had agreed in this lifetime that I would pave the way to help people to not be afraid of difference. I don't believe that every extraterrestrial wants to sing Kumbaya with me, but I do know that the ones I've met is like people. They're more evolved people, they're less evolved people. The ones that in order for human beings to grow up, we have to lower the fear of difference, and also to realize that we're not alone in the universe, that the universe is teeming with life, that the Creator or God has created forms of life that we don't even know about.
That would seem...
And there are other realities. And so that's been part of my journey, to teach people and myself to love. And love and fear cannot exist together.
It kind of seems almost crazy to even remotely try to think that we're alone in this universe. I mean, to me, that's silly. If God created us, or Creator created us, look at the possibilities of the other things or people or, life He's created.
Well, I agree. I also feel that, but human evolution is slow. It takes time for human beings to evolve. People say, why can't we have peace on earth? Well, I'll tell you why we can't. Outside of fear, you can't expect 8 billion people to be on the same page. Everybody has a different lesson. So I'll use myself as an example. When I first started talking about this, the churches wouldn't admit or even look at the fact that there was life outside of our cosmology here. Okay, that went on. And then after 15, 20 years, then some churches, some people started talking about, yeah, there are extraterrestrials, but they're all bad. They're all demons. They're all from Lucifer, and they're the fallen angels, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, so I said, well, okay, we went from not believing to, okay, now we believe, but now it's still a little bit of fear, because now they're all bad. Okay, it's not ideal, but it's growth. Now, people like myself, a few other clergy, other people are saying, yeah, I've met, they're benevolent star people, like they're benevolent human beings, and they're people who are not so benevolent, just like they're star people who are not so benevolent. So you can see how long it takes, because fear and old ways of thinking take time. Mr. Marzulli, he and I probably don't agree on many things theologically, but we don't have to think alike to love alike, but we can say, okay, you say star people exist now. When I was coming along, people were saying they weren't. I don't believe they're all demons. Maybe you do, but that's still growth, and we can have a conversation to open our minds. So I see it as just part of human evolution.
I agree. I think that, one of the biggest problems we have as a universe is the fact that we can't allow each other our own beliefs and be able to talk about them, because somebody always gets mad at somebody else because they don't believe the same.
Well, I'll tell you what. I can tell you just a suggestion how to stop that and how to check it in yourself. Give up being right. Give up the need to be right. We've all been in conversations where it starts out as a conversation, and then you get the feeling that the other person is trying to convince you, trying to make you see it their way. And this was another way that brought me with boundaries and inner peace. I just gave up the need to be right. I will dialogue with anybody, but I don't have to be right. I can just say, well, this is my truth, and I'm willing to grow, but this is where I'm coming from, and that's it. And I tell you, because human beings, Sue, will give up security, they will give up relationships, they will give up family, they will give up jobs. Human beings will give up almost everything for the belief to be right.
I know, I've seen that, and it's, for me, the exciting part for me is to get the opportunity to listen to somebody else's viewpoint, or what they think or how they believe, and to me that's great. I mean, I might not agree with that, but I welcome it. I think it's absolutely amazing. And that's one of the reasons I do my show. That it kind of, there's a big tree and it kind of plugs things in that I listen to and I learn from my guests. And for me, that's amazing.
That's what makes you such a good radio host.
Well, thank you. I love different people's views and beliefs, and I think it's amazing. If we all had the same views and beliefs, the world would just be boring.
Exactly. And so those are the things I touch on, some of them anyway, in the book. And as I said, folks can get them on Amazon or BarnesandNobles.com.
I really advise them too, because, I had the opportunity to sit and read them. And I think my favorite book was God Consciousness, because, each and every, day's journey that you read just kind of builds you more and more. And it's amazing. But, I also like the metaphysics of spiritual healing. We can change ourselves in so many ways that our lives can be the most beautiful thing that we can imagine it to be. And all we have to do is change how we think.
And I'll tell you what, Sue, and all that I got on a deeper level from my extraterrestrial friends.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this is not new stuff. This is not sexy. This is what saints and avatars, whether it was Jesus or Joan of Arc or Muhammad, this is what they've been telling us all through the millennium, that you have to choose between love and fear. Those are really only two emotions, and that we are more powerful than we think we are. We are human beings. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so we are more than just our bodies. And so if you change the way you think, because that's part of what they've done, you change your reality. And they are saying to us, come, join us. Join us, the sons and daughters of God or creation, that you are more than the limited selves that you were taught that you were. And people can say, oh my God, no, that's demon talk. Well, Psalm 82, verse 6, you are gods and children of the Most High. Jesus says in each gospel, the kingdom of heaven is within you.
Anything I can do, you can do as well.
Exactly. Who I am is potential in you. That's what they're telling us. Again, I don't want to say all. The ones that I have met, and I've met 4 races. Actually, 3. I've met the reptilians, I've met the grays, a species of gray. No, I met an Arcturian, and I've met a Palladium, which are more human, blonde, blue-eyed folk. And you know, what's the old adage? By their fruit, you shall know them. By their fruits, you shall know them. So you can say, well, Michael, this all sounds good. But yeah, but you have to look at the way I live my life. I'm the minister of a church. So I you know, I'm not saying all ministers are great, but I try to live my life in what I'm preaching, what I'm teaching. So don't just go by my words. Do the research. You can look up UFOs and religion, do your research. But this stuff from God consciousness, there's no such thing as the New Age. This is ancient wisdom being rediscovered. Jesus said, it's done unto you as you believe. Buddha said, all that we are and all that we ever will be is because of our thinking. Quantum physics is just catching up with that, by saying that if we change the way we look at things, the things we look at begin to change. Quantum physics says that if I look at an object, not only do the object affects me by the way I look at it, but I'm affecting the object is being affected as well. That's quantum physics.
It absolutely makes sense.
We're just discovering that. But the saints and sages and prophets were telling us this thousands of years ago, and we're just catching up.
Do you believe that we're truly near the end of times right now?
No, I don't believe in the end of the world in that aspect. Every ending is a new beginning. Life goes on. There's life after death. Nature shows us that. You don't have to be religious to see that. Just look at the seasons. Now, I do think that there are probabilities, let me be clear, Sue, that if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. But if we believe that human beings can change and that consciousness changes, then a new world is being born. But I don't believe in endings that it's all over. Life goes on, whether it's in this form or not. Now, again, if you're asking me about apocalyptic scenarios, I believe, yeah, we could, if human beings don't wake up, we could destroy ourselves through nuclear exchange. We could destroy ourselves, as we seem to be doing, by poisoning the parent. Our parent, our Mother Earth, poisoning the planet and the air we breathe and the food. Yeah, we could do that. But we could also change. I look at the prophecies as a possible outcome. They don't have to be. If I warn you that if you leave home tonight and there's a fire on Avenue A, don't go there, and you say, okay, I'll go Avenue B home, well, you just averted a catastrophe. So we can change.
I think that, it would be really nice to see changes, galore, but part of me thinks that, sometimes, and it's terrible, but sometimes I don't see the changes that need to be made in the bigger way that they need to be made, for us to be able to save planet Earth and to kind of save ourselves. I think my biggest test was when my dad got cancer. I lost my dad in 2014. And when he got diagnosed with cancer, my first thought was, wow, why? My dad was the most kind, loving human being I've ever met. In 50 years of marriage with my mom and dad, and my parents were still just as in love. I've never seen them argue. They just had the most beautiful life, and my dad was the most giving man. And as I watched my father suffer through this journey, I kept thinking, I'm never going to be able to handle this when my dad's time comes. And I think the test of time was the day that my dad passed, and I looked at my dad and said, you know what, I know where you're going, and I know, you're going to be fine. Just go home. And I have a peace about me with the passing of my dad that is very rare for anybody who's lost a parent. I don't feel sorry. I don't feel sad that my dad's passed. I feel so happy for him that he doesn't have to look at another day of suffering. He's at peace now. He comes to talk to me in a lot of my dreams. I don't have the sorrow and sadness that a lot of people do when they lose a parent. I have such a peace that fills me up inside that when I think of my dad, I don't want to cry. I want to smile, and that's, I never thought since I was a kid, losing my parents, I'd never handle it. And whatever God put in me when I gave it all to him, or whatever the universe put into me, is a peace that is like no other.
Well, it's the peace that passes all understanding, as they call it in the Bible. The peace that passes all understanding. You can't understand it. No one can understand it, but you have it.
It's amazing, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And I kind of, sometimes I feel like God wants me to pass that along, or to, try to teach others to get to that point as well. And that's, I'm telling you, that crossroad where you're kind of sitting and saying, okay, what part of my path, where do you want me to go next, is kind of it feels like it takes forever just for your path to open. But, I continue to do what I do in my show, and I continue to try to, lift spirits as much as I can. But, the books that you've written here are amazing, because maybe that's what I'm called to do, is write as well. But for me, I'm not good at sitting down and writing a book. I can talk about things vocally, but when it comes to writing, it's harder for me to put it down on paper than it is to say it. Mm-hmm. So that's it's so frustrating. Everybody keeps saying, Sue, write a book. And I'm like, I am not a writer. I'm a talker.
Yeah. I hear that.
I would love to live where you are and be able to go, and be a part of your church, because, to me, it's so hard to find a good place to go where, your reverend is practicing what they speak and living what they, living it out. And it's so hard to find, because so many people that are preaching God's word today are not living it.
Well, let me say this to you. You will write a book. You will write a book. Not now. I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, you will write a book. But it takes time. And once you change your mind that you do have something to say. What you said to me in the beginning, Sue, even if you went into hospitals or you did some volunteer work, if you have the time.
I would love that.
Maybe, then research it. Look, I'm sure there are places around where you are. And you could go in and you can tell people about grief. About grief and how I got through grief to the other side. There are places to do. And you can also start writing your book. I just start writing a journal. Every day, write your thoughts down on paper, and you can piece it together. But see, remember what we said about 10 minutes ago. You keep telling yourself that I'm not a writer. So what's the universe going to show you?
Right.
Sue's not a writer. Sue's not a writer. Because if someone is, if you hear the same thing from people more than 3 times, positive or negative, then you have to look at yourself. Okay? You have to do that. I remember when I was hanging out with a friend of mine in Central Park. And I teach. I'm a minister. I teach. And we were talking, and my friend, she was going through something, and I said, I forgot what it was, but basically it was giving advice. And she said, I don't want your advice. Will you stop giving me advice? I didn't ask you for any advice. And basically, I just want you to listen. And that stung me, but it woke me up. It woke me up. And so even little things like that, but if you hear, all you got to do is make a list of the things you do well, the things you love to do. And that will give you a clue as to where to go next. That may be taking some classes. It may be going back to school. It may be taking some classes on Reiki or massage or, energy healing. There are things you can do. I mean, because you don't have to wait for it to hit you on the head. It could be right in front of you and you're just not seeing it. But if you say, now, if you're not a writer, and if you're not a writer, that's fine. But you got 2 different things here. I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer. Well, only one of those is true.
That's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So you have to look at yourself. You said at the beginning of the show, I need to work on boundaries. You got free time? Go Google boundaries, Google boundaries in therapy, or John Bradshaw on boundaries. I mean, buy the cassettes. I mean, there are things you can do to work on yourself so that you can be prepared when time happens and you've learned something new. You said I'm weak on boundaries. Then what do? You work on them.
I've definitely been working on them. I've been working a lot on them.
You're right. You want to write? Write. That's what writers do. They write every day.
For me,
it could be a journal. It could be a journal.
Well, for me, it's easier, like for the writing thing, it's easier for me to have a tape recorder and be able to speak my words.
Fine. However, whatever method works, but eventually you're going to have to write it down.
Right.
If you're going to write. But you may not want to write. I mean, you probably have many gifts. One also has to learn that just because I can do 5 things really well doesn't mean I want to do those 5 things.
I like what I do. I love my show, and my goal is to. I mean, I love Coast to Coast, and that is, George Norrie is the one that really inspired me to do what I do. I love the show. I listen to just about every Coast to Coast interview he does, and I've had every guest that's been on my show has been a guest on Coast to Coast, and I absolutely love what I do, and my dream is to be as big as Coast to Coast, and that's kind of something I got to work on, because I continually tell myself, you're not as good as George Norrie, you're not, and that's something I have to stop, because you know what, there's nothing holding me back from doing just as good as they're doing.
Well, yeah, and you're not going to be as good as George Norrie, because George Norrie is you. You have to be yourself.
Right.
Because everybody else is already taken.
Yep.
So you have to be as good as Sue's going to be. Not as good as George is going to be, not as good as Michael's going to be. You're going to be as good. A lot of people don't reach their goals because they don't make goals that are doable, and so you have to be who you're going to be.
That is good advice. That actually helps me a lot. That's part of my problem, I guess, is I was reaching for somebody else's, Yeah,
you can. Yeah, that's not your goal. That's his life. Like the old saying, be yourself, because everybody else is taken. You can only be who Sue's going to be.
Well, I mean, I want to be able to go to the conventions that they go to, and this is what I love to do. So I want to be the best me I can at what I'm doing. So that's kind of what I'm working on. And part of that is boundaries, and part of that is, stop thinking that you're not good enough to reach your goal. Stop. And those, I mean, as far as I've come, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I was. Yeah.
When we sign off, I had something I wanted that came to me that I want to tell you.
Okay.
Okay. So when at the end, when we sign off, I need to tell you something.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to tell you, I mean, the fact that you took time to come on and talk with us is amazing. But just from your books alone, I have grown a lot in the last few days of being able to read your books. And I want to thank you for what you do. You are truly
thank you for having me.
You are truly blessed.
And, I thank you. And so are you.
I am truly blessed in what I do, but I'm also truly blessed in having, guests like you that come on that, you've taken me to, again, another higher consciousness in my walk with God. And that's my goal right now is to, climb higher with my walk with God. And you've helped me a lot. I mean, you are an amazing human being.
Thank you so much. And I just want to remind the people that they can get my books on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. They can check out my website at www.justmichaeljscarter.com. I have some things on YouTube there. And you can also write me at Michael J. S. Carter, J as in Jerry, S as in Sam, Carter, at gmail.com. I will respond.
That is great. And I advise everybody to check out your website. I did, and it's amazing. But I also advise everybody to check out your books.
Thank you so much.
They are amazing, and I hope you continue to write because you are great at what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And again, I want to thank you again for taking the time. I mean, I know that we're all busy in what we do. And, it's people like you that take the time out of your busy lives to come on here that, make it possible for me to do what I do.
It's not a problem, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Oh, I hope so. You're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was a great interview, guys. He was absolutely amazing. I really advise you guys to go on his website and really check out his website and his books. He is definitely, very talented and very blessed. There's also one other thing I would like to bring to you guys' attention today. I was asked by Marshall Masters to pass the word. He has a San Francisco Bay Area relocation seminar with Marshall Masters and Jennifer Masters. It's a Planet X survival. It is West Coast Exodus Relocation Seminar with Marshall and Jennifer Masters. It's on Sunday, May 22nd, 2 to 5 p.m., and this is a televised event. And Marshall would like me to get the word out there and tell everybody that he would absolutely love for you guys to come and be a part of his live studio audience, and you will be on TV. His information is on his website, so please go on and check that out. It's YOWUSA.com. And all the information on where, when, and how is all on there. So I told Marshall that I would definitely pass that along to my audience. So be sure to check that out. And that's all we have time for today. We post our shows on YouTube. And if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, please visit our info2rail webpage. Just Google info2rail and click on our Google Sites webpage. And there's also a link on that page to our YouTube as well. I want to thank you all, each and every one of you, so much for joining us here at info2rail. If it wasn't, and I tell you guys this every time, if it wasn't for the guests and the listeners, I would not be able to do what I love to do. And I absolutely love to share with the listeners what everybody else likes to do. Their interests, their passions, what they've learned, what they're doing. I absolutely love what I do. And I just want to thank you guys all so much. You guys all mean the world to me, and I love you guys all so much. And I want to thank you for your support, and I hope to see you here each and every week. We got L.A. Marzulli back in the house. We have him coming on next week. And I really hope that you guys are there. But until then, may God bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.